The emergency bells rang through the council building on Nexus Prime. Taemin looked up from his desk as the sound echoed down the long hallways. He had never heard those bells before. In his 10 years working as an aide in the diplomatic wing, nothing had ever been urgent enough to use the emergency system. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see ships landing at the spaceport. Big ships, military ships, representatives from dozens of worlds were arriving faster than he had ever seen. Something was very wrong. Taemin's communication device buzzed. The message was, short. All staff report to council chamber immediately. As he walked down the corridor, Taemin thought about the last few weeks. His human boss, Ambassador Park, had been acting strange. The man seemed worried about something, but he never said what. Park had been sending lots of private messages and holding closed-door meetings. Then, 3 days ago, Park had simply not come to work. His secretary said he was sick, but Taemin knew better. Park never got sick. The council chamber was full when Taemin arrived. Representatives from every member species sat in their assigned seats. The Vrex Empire delegates wore their formal battle armor. The tall, thin Altarians moved their long necks nervously. Even the rock-like granite lords had sent someone, which was rare. Council leader Vextar stood at the center podium. His 4 eyes looked tired. "We have called this emergency session because of reports coming from across the galaxy," he began. "Reports that seem impossible to believe." He pressed a button on his control panel. A huge holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed a map of known space, with thousands of small lights marking inhabited worlds and space stations. 48. Hours ago, we lost contact with New Sol Colony, Vextar continued. We thought it was a communication problem. Then we lost contact with Terra Station. Then Earth itself went silent. Murmurs filled the chamber. Taemin felt his heart beating faster. Earth was the human homeworld. It was one of the most heavily populated planets in the galaxy. We sent investigation teams to 14 human settlements, Vextar said. The holographic map changed, showing the paths of the investigation ships. What they found was unprecedented. The display changed again. Now it showed video footage from one of the investigation teams. Taemin recognized the location immediately. It was Busan Orbital Station, where he had visited last year with Ambassador Park. The station looked normal from the outside. Ships were docked properly. The lights were on. Everything seemed fine. But when the camera moved inside, Taemin saw something that made his stomach feel sick. The station was empty, not destroyed. Not damaged, just empty. Chairs were pushed back from tables as if people had just stood up and walked away. Food was still on plates in the cafeteria, though it was starting to spoil. Personal belongings were left in quarters, even expensive. Equipment was left behind, still running. Every human settlement we have investigated shows the same pattern, Vextar announced. No signs of struggle, no signs of emergency evacuation. The humans are simply gone. General Krex of the Vrex Empire stood up. His armor made loud clicking sounds as he moved. "This is obviously our doing," he declared proudly. "The Vrex Empire has finally solved the human problem. We eliminated them so quickly and efficiently that they had no time to fight back or call for help." Several other delegates nodded in agreement. The humans had been causing problems for years, they said, always getting involved in other species' business, always acting like they knew better than everyone else. But Taemin knew something the others did not know. He was half human, half Altarian. His mother had been human. and he had inherited something from her. The ability to think like humans. Think. If the Vrex Empire destroyed the humans, Taemin said, standing up slowly. Where are the bodies? Where are the destroyed ships? Where is any evidence of a fight? General Krex's 4 eyes focused on Taemin. Perhaps we were so thorough that no evidence remains, he growled. Or perhaps, said a new voice from the back of the chamber, the humans left on their own. Everyone turned to look. It was Sora, the head xenobiologist from the research division. She was carrying a data pad and looked like she had not slept in days. I have spent the last 48 hours analyzing the abandoned human sites, she continued, walking to the front of the chamber. The evidence is clear. The humans did not flee in panic. They did not leave because they were forced to. They left because they planned to leave. She activated her data pad, and new images appeared on the holographic display. Look at this, she said, pointing to a view of a human apartment. The residents took only essential items. They left valuable things behind, but they took family, photos, and personal documents. They turned off all non-essential systems to save power. They even left detailed instructions for maintaining the life support systems. More images appeared. Empty warehouses with inventory lists posted on the walls, factories with maintenance schedules updated until yesterday, even garbage collection routes with notes about which areas no longer needed service. This was not an evacuation, Sora concluded. This was a planned relocation. The humans spent months, maybe years, preparing for this moment. The chamber fell silent. Taemin could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. If Sora was right, then everything they thought they knew about the situation was wrong. But why? Asked Ambassador Zelthara of the Crystal Confederation. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Why would the humans leave without telling anyone? Why abandon everything they had built? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. A young officer appeared on the screen, his face pale with worry. Council leader, the officer said, his voice shaking. We are receiving reports from our deep space monitoring stations. They are detecting massive energy signatures moving beyond the galactic rim. What kind of energy signatures? Vextar demanded. Sir, the officer replied, they match human faster-than-light technology, but the power levels they are beyond anything we have ever recorded. The signatures suggest a fleet of ships larger than anything we thought possible. The chamber erupted in voices. Some delegates shouted questions. Others argued about what it could mean. A few species representatives began making calls to their home governments. Taemin sat down slowly. He thought about Ambassador Park's worried face in those last few weeks. He thought about the careful way the humans had left everything behind. And he thought about something his mother had told him when he was young. Humans, she had said, are very good at planning for problems that others cannot even see yet. As the chaos continued around him, Taemin realized that the galaxy had just lost something very important. But he was beginning to suspect that the humans had not abandoned them. They had been preparing for something big enough to make them leave behind everything they had ever built. And whatever it was probably coming soon. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. Taemin walked through the empty corridors of the diplomatic wing, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Half of the offices were now closed. Without human trade and support, many smaller, species could no longer afford to keep representatives on Nexus Prime. The changes had started small. A few trade routes became unreliable. Some supply deliveries were late. Manufacturing plants on distant worlds reported equipment failures that no one knew how to fix. At first, the council thought these were temporary problems that would solve themselves. They were wrong. Taemin stopped at his office window and looked out at the spaceport. 3 months ago, hundreds of ships arrived and departed every day. Now he could count the active landing pads on 2 hands. The galaxy's economy was falling apart, and no one had realized how much it depended on human involvement until the humans were gone. His communication device buzzed. It was Da-Un from the Historical Archive Division. Her voice sounded tired. Tae-min, can you come to Archive Level 7? I found something you need to see. The Archive Division was deep underground, protected by layers of security and radiation shielding. Taemin had only been there twice before. The hallways were lined with massive data storage units containing thousands of years of galactic history. Da-Yun was waiting for him in Research Room C. She was a small woman with intense eyes who had spent her entire career studying diplomatic records. Her desk was covered with data tablets, printed documents, and empty coffee cups. I have been researching the final year before the humans left, she said without greeting. Look at this. She showed him a chart on her computer screen. It displayed trade agreements, diplomatic meetings, and treaty signings involving humans over the past 5 years. Notice anything strange? She asked. Taemin studied the chart. At first it looked normal. Then he saw the pattern. They were pulling back, he said slowly. In the last year, the humans canceled or reduced their involvement in dozens of agreements. Exactly, Dae-Yun said. But they did it so gradually that no one noticed. They never broke a treaty completely. They just let them expire without renewal. They reduced their participation in joint projects. They stopped proposing new initiatives. She switched to another chart. This one showed human involvement in conflict resolution over the past century. This is even more interesting. Do you know how many interstellar wars the humans prevented in the last 100 years? Taemin shook his head. 17, Da-Yun said. 17 different conflicts that would have destroyed millions of lives. The border war between the Xelon Empire and the Free Traders. The Crystal Confederation's territorial dispute with the Metal Worlds. The religious conflict in the Outer Rings that could have spread across 12 systems. She pulled up detailed files on each conflict. In every case, human diplomats found solutions that no one else could see. They negotiated treaties that satisfied all parties. They provided economic support to prevent desperation. They even deployed peacekeeping forces when necessary. Taemin felt a cold feeling in his stomach. And now they are gone. Now they are gone, Da-Yun agreed. And look what is happening. She showed him current news reports. The Xelon Empire was already having border skirmishes with their neighbors. The Crystal Confederation had issued ultimatums to 3 different species. Pirates were attacking trade routes that had been safe for decades. The humans were not just participants in galactic civilization, Da-Un said quietly. They were the glue holding it together. And I think they knew this would happen when they left. Before Taemin could respond, the room's door opened. A tall man in dark clothes entered. Taemin recognized him immediately, though he had not seen him in years. It was Seok Ho, a resistance leader from the outer colonies. You two have been asking the right questions, Seok Ho said, closing the door behind him. But you have not found all the answers yet. Da-Un stood up quickly. How did you get past security? This is a restricted area. The same way I got past security for 15 years while working with human intelligence operatives, Seok Ho replied calmly. The humans taught me well. Taemin's eyes widened. You worked with human intelligence? Seok Ho sat down in an empty chair. Many of us did, though we did not realize it at the time. The humans had people everywhere, watching and listening and quietly influencing events. They called it maintaining stability. He pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected a holographic map of the galaxy with hundreds of small markers scattered across it. Each of these markers represents a species or government that the humans helped in secret over the past 50 years, Siakho explained. Military advice here, economic support there, advanced medical technology for this world, defensive systems for that colony. The map showed a complex web of connections spanning the entire galaxy. Taimin realized he was looking at a network of influence that no one had ever suspected existed. The humans were playing a game that no one else knew was being played, Siakho continued. They were not just preventing wars, they were shaping the entire political structure of the galaxy. Da'an leaned forward. For what purpose? That is what I am still trying to figure out, Siakho admitted. But I know this much. They shared their best defensive technologies with species that treated them with respect. The others, like the Vrex Empire, got nothing. As if summoned by his words, an emergency alert suddenly filled the room. The Council's emergency broadcast system activated, and Council Leader Vextar's voice echoed from every speaker in the building. All Council members and staff report to the main chamber immediately. We have a situation developing in the former human territories. The three of them hurried upstairs. The Council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Representatives were shouting at each other in dozens of different languages. The main holographic display showed something that made everyone fall silent when they saw it. Massive defensive installations were rising from the surfaces of abandoned human worlds. Weapons platforms that no one had known existed were powering up around former human colonies. And most shocking of all, ancient automated defense networks were activating throughout human space, broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. The message was simple, but its implications were terrifying. Protected by human covenant. Withdrawal beyond this boundary recommended. General Krex of the Vrex Empire was standing at his delegation's podium, his armor dented and scratched. We sent a battle fleet to claim the human homeworld, he announced. They were repelled. Our ships were not destroyed, but they were forced to retreat by weapons we have never seen before. Automated defenses, Sora added from her seat in the research section. The humans built an entire defensive network and left it running when they departed. Any ship that approaches human territory with hostile intent is warned once, then forced to leave. Taimin looked at the display showing the defensive perimeter. It encompassed thousands of worlds and space stations. The humans had not just abandoned their territory. They had turned it into a fortress that operated without them. There is something else, Vextar announced, his 4 eyes focused on the display. Our deep space monitors have detected the same massive energy signatures moving back toward our galaxy. The human fleet, whatever it is, appears to be returning. The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone stared at the display, watching the slow movement of energy signatures that represented ships beyond their understanding. Siakho leaned over and whispered to Taimin, I do not think the humans left to abandon us. I think they left to prepare for something that required them to be somewhere else for a while. As Taimin watched the slow approach of the human fleet, he realized that the galaxy was about to discover what that something was. And he suspected that when they did, nothing would ever be the same again. The humans had not said goodbye when they left, but it was beginning to look like they had not left forever. Ji-Hai wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed out of the excavation tunnel. 6 months of digging on the abandoned human world of New Busan had finally paid off. What she had found beneath the empty cities would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about human capabilities. "Sang-woo, you need to see this," she called to her research partner through the communication system. "Bring Minna with you, and bring the quantum scanners." The three of them had been working together for weeks, ever since the Council approved limited exploration of abandoned human territories. Ji-Hai was officially a quantum archaeologist, someone who studied how ancient civilizations used advanced technology. Sang-woo claimed to be a xenocultural specialist. Minna was supposedly just a brilliant young researcher who volunteered to help. But Ji-Hai was beginning to suspect that none of them were who they claimed to be. The tunnel led down almost a kilometer beneath the surface. The walls were smooth metal that seemed to absorb their flashlight beams. As they descended, Ji-Hai noticed that the air was cleaner than it should be. Something was still running down here, providing power and life support to a facility that was supposed to be abandoned. "How deep does this go?" Minna asked. She was barely 20 years old, but her insights into human technology were far beyond what any normal researcher should possess. "The quantum scans show at least 12 more levels below this one," Ji-Hai replied. "Whatever the humans built here, it is massive." They reached the first major chamber after 20 minutes of walking. Ji-Hai had seen impressive architecture before, but nothing like this. The room was the size of a sports stadium, filled with equipment that hummed quietly in the darkness. Rows of computers processed data streams that scrolled too fast for human eyes to follow. Manufacturing stations stood ready to produce items from stored patterns. But what caught their attention was the wall display at the far end of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of small lights scattered across it. As they watched, some lights pulsed brighter, while others dimmed or changed color. "It is a real-time monitoring system," Sang-woo said quietly. "Those lights represent something happening throughout the galaxy right now." Minna walked to a nearby control panel and began pressing buttons with surprising confidence. "Each light represents a species or government that the humans were tracking," she announced. "Green means stable. Yellow means potential problems. Red means immediate danger." Ji-Hai stared at her young colleague. "How do you know that?" Minna paused, her hands still on the controls. For a moment, she looked much older than her 20 years. "Because I have seen systems like this before," she admitted. "My parents worked for human intelligence services. I grew up around this technology." Sang-woo walked over to join them at the control panel. "Then maybe it is time for truth," he said. He pressed a sequence of buttons that Ji-Hai had not seen him learn anywhere. The wall display changed, showing new information that made all three of them step back in shock. The display now showed detailed profiles of every major species in the galaxy. But these were not the simple cultural summaries that most people knew. These files contained psychological profiles, military capabilities, economic weaknesses, and what appeared to be behavioral prediction models. The humans were not just monitoring everyone, Sang-woo explained. They were modeling their behavior, predicting what each species would do in different situations, planning for every possible future. He pressed more buttons. New files appeared, marked with dates going back hundreds of years. "Look at this. The humans predicted the Vrex Empire's expansion 30 years before it happened. They knew the Crystal Confederation would develop their current political structure before the crystals themselves knew it. Ji-Hai felt dizzy as the implications hit her. They were manipulating galactic politics for centuries. Not manipulating, Minna corrected, pulling up another set of files. Guiding. Look at these records. Every time the humans intervened in a situation, they were trying to prevent larger conflicts or disasters. The files showed intervention after intervention. The humans had prevented economic collapses that would have led to billions of deaths. They had quietly eliminated terrorist groups that planned to destroy entire worlds. They had even provided anonymous tips that helped species avoid natural disasters. But why? Ji-Hai asked. Why did they care so much about protecting species? That often treated them badly. Sang-Woo's expression became serious. Because they knew something that no one else knew. He accessed a new section of files. These ones marked with the highest security classifications. They knew what was coming. The display changed again. This time it showed long-range sensor data from the edge of the galaxy. The readings went back over 200 years, showing the gradual approach of something massive from outside their galaxy. An invasion force? Minna whispered. The humans detected signs of an extragalactic invasion 2 centuries ago. The files showed how human understanding of the threat had evolved over time. First, they had detected strange energy signatures at the galactic rim. Then, they had found evidence of scout ships probing the outer systems. Finally, they had captured and studied the remains of advanced reconnaissance units. The enemy is unlike anything in our galaxy, Sang-Woo explained, reading from the human analysis. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They consume entire civilizations and use the resources to fuel their expansion. Ji-Hai stared at the projected timeline. According to this, the main invasion force will arrive in less than 25 years. 18 years, Minna corrected, checking more recent data. The humans' final calculations showed the timeline accelerating. Sang-Woo activated another display. This one showed a 3-dimensional map of defensive installations throughout the galaxy. Ji-Hai recognized some of them as the automated defense networks that had activated when the humans left. But there were thousands more hidden installations that no one had discovered yet. The humans spent centuries preparing for this invasion, Sang-Woo continued. Every trade agreement they signed, every diplomatic mission they undertook, every piece of technology they shared. It was all part of a plan to help the galaxy survive. But they never told anyone, Ji-Hai protested. They could have warned the council. They could have asked for help. Minna pulled up communication records from the human archives. They tried, she said sadly. Look at these reports. Human diplomats attempted to warn council leadership about the threat 17 times over the past 50 years. Each time, they were dismissed as warmongers or fearmongers. The records showed meeting after meeting where human representatives had tried to discuss long-term galactic defense. Each time, other species had accused them of trying to increase their own power or create military conflicts where none existed. So, the humans decided to prepare the galaxy without telling them, Sang-Woo concluded. They built defenses in secret. They positioned resources where they would be needed most. They even shaped political developments to ensure that the right leaders would be in place when the invasion came. Ji-Hai walked to another control panel and activated a new display. This one showed the current status of every species in the galaxy, color-coded according to their readiness to face the coming threat. Green species have the technology and organization needed to survive, she read from the display legend. Yellow species need additional support but can probably be saved. Red species lack the necessary capabilities and may not survive. She noticed something disturbing. The Vrex Empire is marked red. They spent too much time on conquest and not enough on development, Mina explained. Their military is impressive, but their technology is outdated and their society is too rigid to adapt quickly to new threats. Sang-Woo pointed to other red markers on the display. Look at all the species that treated the humans badly. Most of them are red. The humans tried to help them anyway, but there are limits to what can be done. And the species marked green? Ji-hai asked. Most of them had positive relationships with humans over the past century, Min-ah replied. They received better technology, transfers, more favorable trade agreements, and subtle guidance that helped them develop the capabilities they will need. The three of them stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had discovered. The humans had not abandoned the galaxy. They had spent centuries preparing it for a threat that most species did not even know existed. There is one more thing, Sang-Woo said quietly. He accessed a final set of files. These ones dated just days before the human exodus. The humans left detailed instructions for activating their defensive network. But the activation codes are scattered across dozens of worlds, and they can only be used by species that the humans trusted. Ji-hai looked at the complexity of the activation system. It would require cooperation between multiple species, sharing of resources, and coordination on a scale that the galaxy had never achieved. They designed it so we would have to work together, she realized. The only way to activate their defenses is to do what we have never done before. Truly unite as a galactic community. Min-ah nodded. And we have less than 18 years to figure out how. As alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the facility, Ji-hai realized their time might be even shorter than that. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Kyung-ho stood at the central podium, looking out at representatives from every species in the galaxy. The holographic display behind him showed the undeniable truth that Ji-hai, Sang-Woo, and Min-ah had discovered in the underground human facilities. The invasion force will reach our outer systems in 14 years, Kyung-ho announced. His voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. The humans knew this was coming for over 2 centuries. Everything they did was designed to help us survive. General Krex of the Vrex Empire stood up slowly. His 4 eyes looked tired, and his usually proud posture seemed defeated. You are saying that while we accused them of being warmongers, the humans were actually preparing to save us? That is exactly what I am saying, Kyung-ho replied. He had spent weeks analyzing the human data files, and what he found had changed everything he thought he knew about galactic history. Yoonji, the council's chief philosopher, raised her hand to speak. She was a small, elderly woman whose insights had guided the council through many difficult decisions. I have been studying the ethical implications of what the humans did, she said. The question we must ask ourselves is whether their actions were justified. She activated her own display, showing a timeline of human interventions over the past 3 centuries. The humans prevented the Great War between the northern spiral species. They stopped the plague that would have wiped out the crystalline worlds. They guided the development of faster-than-light travel to ensure it reached all species, not just the powerful ones. The display showed intervention after intervention, each one preventing disasters that could have killed billions of beings. But they did this through manipulation and deception, protested Ambassador Zelthara of the Crystal Confederation. They made decisions for all of us without asking our permission. They treated us like children who could not handle the truth, because every time they tried to tell us the truth, we refused to listen, replied Jae-sung from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to him. Jae-sung had been Ambassador Park's assistant before Park disappeared with the other humans. For months, people had wondered why he had been left behind. I was not left behind by accident, Jae-sung continued, walking to the front of the chamber. Ambassador Park asked me to stay. He said someone needed to be here to explain things when the time came. He pulled out a data tablet and connected it to the chamber's main display. The humans tried to warn you about the coming invasion 17 times over the past 50 years. Each time, you accused them of trying to start wars or increase their own power. The display showed recordings of council meetings where human diplomats had tried to discuss long-term galactic defense strategies. In every case, other species had rejected their proposals. After the 15th attempt, Jae-sung continued, the humans realized that you would only accept their help after you understood what the alternative was. So they decided to prepare the galaxy in secret. New images appeared on the display. They showed human civilian installations that were actually military bases, human merchants who were intelligence operatives, human diplomats who were behavioral scientists studying other species. Every major space station in the galaxy has hidden human defensive systems, Jae-sung revealed. Every important trade route is protected by concealed human weapons platforms. Even this council building has defensive systems that you never knew existed. He pressed a button on his tablet. Suddenly, panels in the chamber walls slid open, revealing sophisticated defensive equipment. Energy shields activated around the perimeter. Weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments. The humans have been protecting you for so long that you forgot what the galaxy was like before they arrived, Jae-sung said. The constant wars, the pirate attacks, the terrorist incidents. Most of those stopped happening because human operatives quietly eliminated the threats. Council leader Vexitar's 4 eyes were wide with shock. You are saying that human agents have been operating in secret throughout our territories for centuries? Not just operating, Kyung-ho added, pulling up more data files. Directing. Every major political development in the past 200 years was influenced by human planning. The display showed a complex web of connections. The rise and fall of governments. The development of new technologies. The formation of alliances and trade agreements. All of it connected to subtle human influence. The Vrex Empire's expansion was allowed to continue because the humans calculated that you would develop military technologies needed for the coming war, Kyung-ho explained to General Krex. The Crystal Confederation's political evolution was guided to create the administrative structures we will need to coordinate galactic defense. He turned to other representatives. The free traders were helped to develop their logistics networks because we will need rapid resource distribution. The tech worlds were given research directions that led to the defensive technologies we will need. Yoon-ji stood up again. This means that none of us have been truly free for centuries, she said slowly. Our entire civilization has been shaped by human manipulation. To save our lives, Jae-sung replied firmly. Every human intervention was designed to help us survive the invasion. They sacrificed their own freedom to move openly in the galaxy so that the rest of us would have a chance. But why leave? Asked Ambassador Zelthara. If they were so concerned about protecting us, why abandon us just before the invasion? Jae-sung's expression became sad. Because they knew that you would never accept their leadership willingly. As long as the humans were here, Other species would always resent their influence and question their motives. The only way for the galaxy to unite against the invasion was for the humans to step back and let you discover the truth for yourselves. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The humans had not abandoned them. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, giving up their place in galactic society so that everyone else could grow strong enough to survive. "There is more," Kyung-ho announced. "The humans left detailed battle plans for fighting the invasion. But these plans can only be activated through cooperation between all galactic species." The display showed the activation requirements for the human defensive network. Each major system required authorization codes from multiple species, resource sharing between traditional enemies, joint military commands that had never existed before. "They designed it so that we have no choice but to work together," General Krex realized. "The defensive systems will not function unless we unite." "And time is running out," added Min-Ah, who had entered the chamber with new sensor data. "The invasion's advanced scouts have already reached the outer rim systems. We have detected the destruction of 4 uninhabited worlds in the past week." The display showed the latest sensor readings. Massive ships unlike anything in their galaxy were systematically destroying everything in their path. They left nothing behind, no debris, no survivors, no trace that the worlds had ever existed. "According to human projections," Min-Ah continued, "we have perhaps 10 years before the main invasion force arrives, maybe less." Yunji looked around the chamber at all the different species representatives. "So we must choose," she said quietly. "We can maintain our independence and face extinction, or we can accept that our survival depends on unity and cooperation that we have never achieved before." "There is a third option," said a new voice from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned to see So-Ra, the xenobiologist who had first studied the empty human settlements. She was carrying a communication device that was broadcasting an incoming signal. "We have received a transmission from the human fleet," she announced. "They are requesting permission to return to the galaxy." The chamber erupted in voices as species representatives began arguing about whether to allow the humans back. Some demanded their return immediately. Others insisted that the humans had lost their right to be part of galactic civilization. But Jae-sung was studying the communication device with growing alarm. "This transmission is not coming from outside the galaxy," he said. "It is coming from somewhere much closer." He connected the device to the main display. The signal's origin point appeared on the galactic map, and everyone gasped. The human fleet was not returning from beyond the galaxy's edge. They were already here, hidden in the space between star systems, waiting to see what choice the galaxy would make. "How long have they been there?" whispered Council Leader Vextar. "According to the signal timestamp," Jae-sung replied, "they never left." Dong-hyun stood in the Council's main communication chamber, staring at the holographic image of Admiral Yu-jin. The human officer looked exactly as he remembered from years ago, calm, professional, and somehow sad. Behind Yu-jin, the bridge of his ship showed other humans working quietly at their stations. "You never left," Dong-hyun said. It was not a question. "We could not leave," Yu-jin replied. "The invasion timeline accelerated beyond our projections. We moved our visible population to hidden fleet bases and maintained the illusion of departure. We needed the galaxy to believe we were gone so you would discover the truth about the coming threat." Dong-hyun felt anger rising in his chest. "More manipulation, more lies. When does it end?" "It ends now," Yu-jin said firmly. The invasion force will arrive in the outer systems within 18 months. We no longer have time for gradual revelation. The galaxy must choose immediately: accept our help and work together, or face extinction divided. The communication. Chamber's door opened, and HFY entered with several other representatives. She was a tall, proud woman who represented the Independence Coalition, species that refused to accept any form of human assistance. "We have heard enough lies," HFY announced. "The Independence Coalition formally rejects any human involvement in galactic defense. We will face this invasion on our own terms, with our dignity intact." Eugen's expression did not change. "I understand your position, but you should know that our defensive systems will protect all inhabited worlds, regardless of their political decisions." "We do not want your protection," HFY replied coldly. "Disable your weapons platforms in our territories immediately." "I cannot do that," Eugen said quietly. "The systems are designed to protect all intelligent life. They do not distinguish between those who want our help and those who do not." HFY's face showed her fury. "Then you continue to treat us like children who cannot make their own decisions." Dong-hyun watched this exchange with growing understanding. The humans had known this would happen. They had predicted that some species would reject their help even in the face of extinction, and they had planned for it. "The defensive systems cannot be overridden locally," Eugen continued. "They respond only to the Central Command Network, which requires authorization from multiple species. This was designed to prevent any single government from making decisions that would affect galactic survival." "Show them," Dong-hyun said suddenly. "Show them what the invasion looks like." Eugen nodded and activated a new display. The holographic projector filled the room with images from the outer rim systems. Massive alien ships, each one larger than most space stations, moved through the void like living things. Where they passed, entire solar systems simply vanished. "They do not destroy worlds," Eugen explained. "They consume them. Every atom of matter is converted into materials for building more ships and weapons. Every form of life is analyzed and then eliminated. They leave nothing behind because they use everything." The display showed sensor recordings of the consumption process. Huge tendrils of energy reached out from the alien ships, breaking apart planets and absorbing the debris. Even the stars were somehow dimmed, their energy drawn away to power the invaders' advance. "How many ships?" asked General Krex, who had arrived with reinforcements from the Vrex Empire. "Our long-range sensors have identified over 10,000 capital ships," Eugen replied. "But they are building more as they advance. Every system they consume gives them resources to create additional vessels." HFY stared at the images, but her expression remained defiant. "These recordings could be fabricated. How do we know this threat is real?" Before Eugen could respond, emergency alarms began sounding throughout the council building. Sora's voice came over the communication system from the sensor monitoring station. "All senior staff to the main chamber immediately. We are receiving real-time feeds from the outer rim. The invasion has accelerated beyond all projections. The main chamber was chaos when they arrived. Representatives from dozens of species were shouting questions and demands. The holographic display showed a tactical map of the galaxy's edge, with red markers indicating the destruction of system after system. "They are moving faster than our models predicted," Sora announced. "At this rate, they will reach populated systems in less than 6 months. Council Leader Vextar called for order. "Admiral Eugen, what do your people recommend?" Eugen's image appeared on the main display. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed intense activity as humans prepared for battle. We recommend immediate activation of all defensive systems and full military coordination between all galactic species. This is not a threat that any single government can face alone. And if we refuse to work together, asked Ambassador Zelthara, then we all die together, Eugen replied bluntly. The enemy does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They do not leave survivors. Unity is not an option. It is a requirement for survival. HFY stood up again. The Independence Coalition maintains its position. We will not accept human leadership under any circumstances. Then do not accept human leadership, Eugen said. Accept human assistance under your own leadership. The defensive systems are designed to respond to local command authority. Human ships will follow the orders of whatever government controls each system. This seemed to surprise HFY. You would place your forces under our command? If that is what it takes to save lives, yes, Eugen confirmed. Human forces will integrate into existing military structures wherever possible. We are not trying to conquer anyone. We are trying to help everyone survive. Dong-hyun realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. The humans were offering to place their superior military forces under the command of species that had spent years treating them with suspicion and hostility. There is one condition, Eugen continued. All participating governments must share intelligence and coordinate their defense efforts. The enemy adapts quickly to local tactics. Only through shared information can we stay ahead of their learning curve. General Krex stepped forward. The Vrex Empire accepts these terms. Our fleets will coordinate with human forces under unified command structure. One by one, other species representatives announced their acceptance. The Crystal Confederation agreed to share their advanced communication networks. The tech worlds offered their manufacturing capabilities. The free traders provided their logistics expertise, but HFY remained standing. The Independence Coalition requires time to consider these terms. Time we do not have, Sora announced from the sensor station. The invasion force is now only 4 months away from the first inhabited systems. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. The timeline had accelerated beyond all predictions. Decisions that were supposed to take months now had to be made in days. Eugen's expression became grave. We are activating all defensive systems immediately. Species that wish to coordinate will have full access to our military resources. Those that prefer to maintain independence will still receive protection from our automated defenses, but they will not have access to tactical intelligence or coordinated support. HFY looked around the chamber, seeing the fear in the faces of representatives from hundreds of worlds. And if we discover later that we made the wrong choice, then you change your choice, Eugen said simply. The humans will accept any government into the coordinated defense network at any time, no questions asked and no penalties imposed. Dong-hyun watched HFY's face as she wrestled with the decision. Her pride demanded independence, but her responsibility to her people demanded survival. The Independence Coalition will consider coordination on a trial basis, she said finally. But we reserve the right to withdraw if we believe human influence becomes excessive. Agreed, Eugen replied immediately. As the session continued, Dong-hyun found himself thinking about the price that humanity had paid for this moment. They had given up their place in galactic society, accepted suspicion and hostility, endured centuries of manipulation accusations, all to prepare for a threat that most people refused to believe existed. And now, When their help was finally needed, they offered it without conditions or demands for recognition. The invasion began 6 weeks later. The first battles were fought at the galaxy's edge, where automated human defense platforms held the line long enough for the combined fleets to organize their response. When the main engagement came, it was humans who led the charge, but under the flags of a dozen different governments. The war lasted 3 years. When it ended, the galaxy was saved, but changed forever. Some species emerged stronger than before. Others barely survived. A few, despite all human efforts to protect them, were lost entirely. In the aftermath, as the galaxy rebuilt, a new council was formed. This time, humans were not hidden advisors or secret protectors. They were equal partners in a civilization that had learned the cost of division and the power of unity. Dong-hyun, now an elderly man, often thought about the price of survival. The humans had been right about almost everything, but they had also paid the highest price of all, the loss of their innocence about what it meant to be responsible for the survival of others. The galaxy was safer now, but it would never again be as simple as it had once seemed.